shelf.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for taking time today. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start by asking you, Benjamin, about taking on the role. I mean, I think a lot of people aren't maybe aware of how popular the novels are and that they're second only to the Sherlock series in terms of how popular they've been over the years. What is it that makes him so timeless, do you think, as a character? And what's appealing about that for you to take on the role?
I had not come across Maigret somehow, despite him being as popular as that. So it was all new to me. But what I discovered was these books they're very short, they're very pithy, they're designed to be read on a kind of on a train journey, generally sort of 150 pages, really simple language. But in that simple language and in that the kind of domesticity of the setting, like there's so much depth. And William Faulkner always compares him to Chekhov, and there's something about how simple these setups are and yet how much depth there is. And I think we need more and more of that nowadays. I think we're so used to very superficial entertainment and everything being about what it looks like. And I think to have something that is so simple but with so much depth is really lovely. And I think Patrick managed to put all of that simplicity and depth into the script, and it's there in Maigret. You know, he doesn't use big words, he doesn't say an awful lot, but somehow all of humanity is kind of there, and I found that really intriguing.
Well, and Shaniqua, with the Les Maigret, as they call them in the novels, the his force at La Crime, how do you think she sees him as a leader and as a person? And does that change, do you think, her kind of perspective as the first series goes along?
Um, I think Genevieve is very loyal to Maigret, and I think she does look up to him. And I think she likes the fact that he gives, I mean, he respects all his team members. I think like I think you get that from Maigret, that the people that he has around him are very loyal to him, and that he gives them tremendous amount of respect. And you see that as through the season as well. They get more and more opportunities to kind of go off and do their own thing and things. And I think Maigret notices each of their strengths. And I actually think without them, there isn't really a Maigret. I feel like there's a scene that I think PBS put out the other day where we're kind of all around the table and he's kind of saying, "Oh, I didn't get a chance to do this." And Lucas is like, "No, I already did that." And he's like, "Oh, I was meant to do this." And it's like, I think they kind of all work in rhythm together. I think they're called the Maigrets for a reason. I think they are almost like his inner life, you know, like there's him and then there's us four that kind of make up his like heartbeat and his liver and his lungs, like, you know, we're kind of the kind of moving pieces to his mind. So yeah, and I think you get to see that throughout the season as it progresses, as you do get to see a bit more of who we are and why we're on his team and what our strengths are. So yeah.
And well, and speaking of kind of his heart too, one of the things I think that makes Maigret so refreshing is his home life, his marriage. It's so unusual to have a kind of support system like that. So many lead detectives have the kind of they've sacrificed that part of their life completely, whether it's divorce because they couldn't handle the job or that kind of thing. But Louise and he are so close. Can you talk a bit about how that balances him? I mean, I love the line she has, I forget which episode it's in, where she's basically like, "I love you, I hate your job." That it's kind of that simple in a way, but obviously it's their marriage isn't necessarily perfect. But can you expand a bit about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's really rare to find a detective who has anything but a toxic home life, and it was really nice to play those scenes in contrast to everything. You know, there was so many locations, almost a different location every day, and kind of these lovely ensemble chaotic scenes with the Maigrets where Maigret's ideas are being stress tested by Janvier and Lapointe, and to then go into the apartment with Louise Maigret and everything to just kind of slow down and calm down, and Maigret can take his armor off and take his coat off, and like we see a different side to him there. And there's levity and humor and such warmth and love for Louise, and that is, it's a delight to play, and without that I think it's very hard to do all the other things. I don't know how people go into these holes, sort of those detectives with toxic home lives. If I hadn't had those 2 or 3 weeks where we were shooting in the apartment to balance out all of the kind of bleakness of the murders, I would have struggled. It was really grounding for me, and I think, yeah, you know, as life, as in art, there you need someone who you can completely be yourself with, and that's what Patrick depicts so beautifully with his script, and Steph just brings such warmth and energy. It just kind of lets you breathe out in a scene with her. So yeah.
Well, and you mentioned earlier about the depth of the stories and kind of how much is kind of packed into one episode.
Mm.
Um, the I've seen the show described kind of to as a why done it as opposed to a who done it. Do you think that's kind of a fair way to look at the show? Do you think that both of you, do you think that kind of if it's people weren't familiar with the novels, say, is that a kind of good entryway for people to get a sense of what they're expecting?
I think it definitely is. You know, there's no big reveals in Maigret. Quite often, you know who the perpetrator of the crime is from very early on, and we're actually interrogating the motive and trying to find out what the need was to commit that crime, and that's what's interesting. Like Simenon talks about driving normal people to their limits. So, you know, how does your average person in the street wake up one morning and go to bed and he's committed a murder, and he genuinely believes that can happen to anyone, and I think Maigret does too. And by the end of the series, we see that he's almost pushed to that same limit. Um, so yeah, he's trying to work out his own motivations as he works out the motivations of these criminals, and that is the key. And also trying to analyze his own flaws and how that might impact on his understanding of other people.
Thank you so much. Our time is up already, but I
Oh,
wanted to thank you. It was great talking to you both. I really, really enjoyed the series. I can't wait for more. If there's more, it'll be great.
thanks,
Thank you so
Sam.
much.
Amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.